My name's Dom. I'm a member of Socialist Alliance and Geelong Housing Action Group, GHAG. We're organising this action for National Homelessness Week. Homelessness is a growing problem in Australia. It's especially affecting young people. It's especially affecting vulnerable groups, single mothers, disabled people, queer people. It's a major issue just here in Geelong, where we are based. We have close to 5,000 people, roughly, sleeping rough every night, and that's through winter, and that number is increasing. This really is reaching crisis levels, and government, all levels of government, state, federal, local, they're not pursuing effective or adequate solutions to this crisis. And so we're here to mostly to mobilise community, to build networks, to put pressure on power brokers, and for GHAG at least, this is also a little bit of a soft reboot. GHAG, Geelong Housing Action Group, has been on a bit of a hiatus recently, so we're hoping that with this event we can sort of get back into gear and galvanise community into taking more action and getting organised.
Hi, I'm Chris. I've been a member of the Geelong Housing Action Group for a couple of years now. Nothing's changed. It's still happening in Geelong and everywhere in Australia. We've got homeless people just sleeping over here at the bottom of our action. So it's still a huge problem. People are being moved on. It's just no one cares for them. It's just not being solved. No one's taken any notice, especially in Geelong. Geelong's Sleepy Hollow. No one gives a shit about what's happening in Geelong.
I'm here today as a keynote speaker, but also as a long-term resident of Nor Lane, one of the most disadvantaged communities in Australia. And yes, I'm very worried about the misspend and the misinformation about the housing crisis when we do have solutions. We do have community action groups devoted. We have an incredible system of committed services and programs, but what we don't have is any consistency to any economic pathway forward. And industry is depending on planners, they're depending on local government, they're depending on land grabs. I feel like Geelong is still historically land grabbing without any ethics or a moral centre. And economically we could be doing far better. And it is a sad day when the Mayor of our council believes that a double-page colour spread that would have cost council thousands is much more important to promote his ego than being down here with us and talking about real solutions to real housing issues.
Turning points for me that made me want to get politically active was when I was working as a GP in a service for people experiencing homelessness and poverty, and just the feeling of absolute overwhelm and helplessness at being unable to really address what was the cause of someone's health issues, and even things that you should be able to treat relatively easily were almost impossible because someone didn't have safe and secure housing. So someone with type 1 diabetes, I mean, that is a serious condition, but you can absolutely manage it and live with it. But you need a fridge to keep your insulin in. If you don't have a house, you don't have a fridge. And I had a young man that I looked after, and he ended up dying. He was bouncing in and out of hospital, and it was a lack of a house that was the cause of his death, not his diabetes. We could have managed the diabetes. They had women who, had the most harrowing experiences through their lives, were homeless because of, the most horrific violence, and, get a cold, get a chest infection. Again, something that should be manageable, but in freezing winters would be sleeping on the streets, and that's something that could become life-threatening. So you'd be on the phone begging someone for some sort of emergency accommodation for a couple of nights just so that the person could survive. We know that the numbers of people experiencing, street homelessness, which is the kind of pointiest end, it's just growing and growing. But there's a whole lot of homelessness that you don't necessarily see, that's not as visible. Tens of thousands of Victorians every night experience homelessness, whether it's sleeping in their car, couch surfing, on the street, or are staying in situations that are a threat to their livelihoods, their well-being, because they absolutely have no other option. They've got nowhere else to go. This isn't...
My name's Sarah Hathaway. I'm a member of the Geelong Housing Action Group, which is a grassroots activist group campaigning for housing justice. We're here today in Johnson Park with our action, Housing Justice Speak Up. These actions don't happen on their own, so it's really important for those watching, if you're passionate about housing justice, about people sleeping rough, about renters' rights, and you live in Geelong, please reach out to us on the socials and come and help us organise future actions.
Homelessness is not merely a lack of housing. It is an ongoing health and human rights crisis that disproportionately affects society's most vulnerable. While frontline services continue to do what they can under challenging circumstances, they also remind us that the solution lies in more than good intentions and tokenistic promises. The housing system is failing people, especially people on low incomes, those in receipt of below poverty threshold government payments such as job seeker, and a diverse range of groups whom governments, society and culture continues to marginalise. The ongoing transfer of public housing stock to community housing providers represents more than asset redistribution. It represents a complete abdication of government responsibility to the people they claim to represent and serve.
Shit's getting really hard, and it has been for a good while now. Every human has a right to shelter, food, water and safety. You deserve it because you exist. You don't have to earn it. It just comes with being human. It's about time that this becomes a reality, because it can be done. It is entirely possible. Let's cause some good trouble to make sure it does get done. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kay. I'm in Johnson's Park today here trying to raise awareness for the fact that homelessness happens all the time for all different kinds of reasons. Myself, I was homeless for 7 years from the ages to 15 to 22. It was hard. And the reason that was because I simply didn't have a safe dynamic at home, and I had to get away from that, and unfortunately it was safer on the streets. That should never be a situation for a 15-year-old, ever. So yeah, I'm here with Social Science to support them and be a part of them and stand up for safety.
As a long-term resident of Norlane, I'm concerned with the amount of developers from other towns, other communities coming in, working with state government and local government to purchase disadvantaged housing instead of supporting social housing, public housing development. The houses that are going up in what was disadvantaged properties is so fast. It's very rapid. More families are getting pushed out. This in turn has led to a real break in our social economy. We find from about 5, 6 p.m. on any given night, people are homeless, they're rough sleeping, they're sleeping at families, at friends. Due to the high levels of disadvantage, family violence is an issue, crimes are an issue. So just focusing on housing in Norlane to Corio isn't enough. We need to focus on intergenerational poverty and systemic exclusion from opportunities to increase their own economy and their own advantage within a community. And so we witness generation and generation of children growing up with no hope. And we're very responsible for raising children without hope.
Hi. Today we gather on stolen land to condemn the sell-off of property supposed to be used for the benefit of the people, while ever-increasing numbers are injected into homelessness or are stuck in the predatory cycle of private rentals. Never sure of a roof over our heads as the property owners prioritise profit over human need. The injustice is palpable. If I sound fed up, it's because I am. I have spent my life living in poverty with complex disabilities, raising children and contributing where I can through work, study or volunteering, while constantly navigating inflating rents, dangerous property conditions and the whims of landlords and real estates. I have moved on average every 2 years for the length of my adult life. My children have lived in over 20 homes. Our connections to support, networks, school, work, constantly disrupted because we are forced to move again. We watched as property developers moved into suburb after suburb we had called home, bulldozing the cheaper, older homes and replacing them with high-density, environmentally irresponsible dwellings and tripling the rent, forcing us to move again, until our only option was to move 2 states away to one of the last pockets of affordable housing on the East Coast, Norlane. Here we found connection, support, community and purpose, the inherently human needs that enable a fulfilling life. These have proven to be the missing elements we needed to find our strengths, our talents and our confidence to achieve and thrive. We finally found home. I thought we were finally able to settle, to relax and focus on living instead of surviving. Then my neighbour and I learned of the sell-off of the public housing in our area, one in our street. We heard the auction inside our homes. The abject fear that our home is no longer secure bit into my chest. I knew this pattern. I've watched it play out too many times. I have had to run from its consequences too many times. I am exhausted, depleted of the ability to survive this again. It isn't just the 7,790 odd people on the waiting list of public housing, all the almost 2,000 people surviving on the streets of Geelong that are impacted. It is also the thousands who, like me, are clinging on in the private rental market. This pattern strips us of all our rights to safe, secure home, and by extension, community, support and a fulfilling life. 16 odd properties were ultimately put up for sale by the state government during the federal election earlier this year in north of Geelong. No consultation with community took place, no inquiry into our needs, or engagement with the multiple very active community organisations in the area, all of who are well positioned to be able to keep those properties available to those who need them. Now, the City of Greater Geelong Council has also announced a list of locations across the region that are to be sold off. Multiple of them had been earmarked for community housing projects through community consultations that expressed our high need in this region. All of this adds up to, during a very well documented housing crisis, through an environmental crisis and a mental health crisis in a region with some of the most devastating levels of inequality, mental illness and homelessness in the nation, which are all intrinsically linked to community well-being, our illustrious leaders have decided to actively increase the severity of hardship the people of Geelong are experiencing by selling off our land to profiteering property developers. Instead of doing the job we elected them to do, facilitate access to our most basic human needs and rights. It is time we remind them of what we entrusted them to do, not for us, but with us. Because the actions and decisions being made clearly communicate that the needs of the people are no longer a priority in any level of Australian government.
And what a sad day that our council's mayor can put out a lovely colour spread about himself. Is this a democratic country or is this fascism? Who can tell? Who can tell what form of politics they're using against us, their voters, their citizens, their people? So I stand here with all of you and thousands of intergenerational families suffering from poverty, lack of opportunity, exclusion from success, deprived of economy, all sorts of economies, their social value, their cultural value, their ethical centre, their faith. I don't want to see any more children growing up in the back of a Commodore, sleeping at the back of Coles at Carrara. I don't want to see it anymore. So whatever we have to do it.
And that's about all I've got to say. And get yourself a daisy, y'all. Thank you everyone.